it's on some level, it's all just unconscious causes that the person himself can't ultimately account for. So there are situations in which he, I'm sure in his life, behaved like a mensch. He behaved totally responsibly, and there are situations where he behaved like this, and he can't account for the difference in those two cases. He can't account for why. I mean, let's just say it's a fact that if he had gotten 1 hour more sleep the night before and hadn't had a fight with his girlfriend and had, his blood sugar level was a little bit higher and hadn't had a friend who had told him to drink one more beer, which he, normally would have resisted but couldn't because of all the other factors I just mentioned. And that is the difference that made the difference that caused him to be this, total misfit on the road. Whereas if you had just tweaked those dials a little bit, no fight with a girlfriend, one more bite of food in the morning, he would have acted as you would have acted in that case, say.
So ultimately,
let's say that's true. Then there's something. There's a kind of bad luck component to all of this creeping in. There's a concept of moral luck, which is due to the philosopher Thomas Nagel, who's done a lot of interesting work. Half of which I really agree with, and some of it I don't. But the concept of moral luck is that it does seem unfair that there are many situations in which people create immense harms doing stuff that you and I have gotten away with. I mean, they're not worse people than we are. Like, you and I have both driven when we shouldn't have driven. We had one beer too many, or I mean, there are things that we did. Or you look at a text, when you should never look at your phone when you're driving, but you decide, I'm expecting a text, and you look, and there are people who are looking at that text right now and just killing some child in the crosswalk, right? And their lives are going to be ruined, and they're going to go to prison, and they're exactly like you and me, right? So there's an aspect of luck here, but that the luck actually propagates backward into the kind of brain you have, the kind of upbringing you had, the kind of parents you had, the kind of the fact that you got hit in the head as hard as you did or didn't, and no one has made themselves. So I'm a little bit more, I'm less judgmental about some of these things, given my view of free will, but it's not that I'm not interested in making the interventions that would make a difference. Whatever we could have done to have gotten him to behave differently, we should have done. Whatever we should need to do now to him to make society better and to make him better and to get restitution for the woman, we should do all that. And so this does entail locking up certain dangerous people. And it does entail, we have to keep ourselves safe from people who are going to reliably act badly. And I don't know where he falls on that spectrum, but it's not the difference between the feeling you get when you hear, it was brain damage. I sort of have that feeling about everything. If he gets a brain scan, if he goes to trial now, he gets a brain scan, and we find that his brain is just massively damaged in all the right areas that would have eroded his impulse control. Right, that would seem to let him off the hook a little bit. He would look like someone who was unlucky more than he would look like a bad person, right? And I sort of see bad people as unlucky too. I mean, I recognize that there are certain people who are classically bad people. There are psychopaths who you just, not only can you not rely on them, you can rely on them to be bad actors. So you have to be in a posture of self-defense with respect to these people. But I do view them as unlucky on some fundamental level.
I share that thought, and I share that thought much more as I get older, and I have a more philosophical point of view when it comes to people that live in impoverished neighborhoods, especially like this Baltimore thing that was going on. We were just having this conversation the other day last podcast about these kids that robbed the RT reporter. I don't know if you've seen the video of it. There's an RT reporter interviewing these kids that are on the street that are causing all this havoc in Baltimore. And they start swarming this reporter, and then they rob her and take her purse and take off. And I'm like, imagine being one of those kids. Imagine being in that environment. Imagine being, you want to talk about determinism, imagine being born into this crime-ridden environment. Who knows what kind of family you have? Who knows what kind of influences you have? Who knows what kind of experiences that you've had to react to and protect yourself from, and develop this hardened, thick skin and attitude and also survival instincts. And you also, your family or the people that you can reliably count on are the people that you hang out in the street, your gang. I mean, that is the big thing with gang violence. One of the big things with gang violence, one of the dirty secrets of it, is that a lot of it comes from broken homes. When people don't have a strong family environment and people they can count on and trust, they don't have anybody that's there for them. And then they find someone that's there for them in the gang. The gang becomes their new family, and they will do anything to keep that love, to reinforce that love.
Yeah.
And we all want to look at it as they're criminals. They should be home by 10. There's a curfew on the street. It's completely unrealistic. And if you were in their point of view, or if you were in their life, rather, and if you saw it through their point of view, you would probably see exactly what they see. You would look at life the way they look at life.
Also, there's another variable here, which is just the influence of mob behavior. People will behave in crowds in ways that they wouldn't otherwise.
Why is that? What is that? What's the mechanism behind that?
Yeah, it's a fascinating. Well, I can't speak to the mechanism neurologically, but it's a fascinating social phenomenon that has been thought about for at least a century. It's there was a philosopher Elias Canetti who wrote a book, Crowds and Power, which is very interesting on this topic. I mean, a crowd is almost like a fire. Once it gets started, the mob will behave by its dynamics that aren't really explained by the individual intentions of the individuals in the mob. And it was a great book. Did you ever hear this book, Among the Thugs, by Bill Buford? It's probably like 25 years ago. He's a really nice writer. He edited this literary magazine, Granta, I believe, back in the day, and he got fascinated with the phenomenon of soccer hooliganism, and he went to the UK and just started hanging out with these just diehard, I guess they were, I don't know, Manchester United or Arsenal fans, but he got in with these guys who were normal guys, like plumbers and electricians and people who had real lives. These were not just teenagers who were thugs. They were people who had families, but soccer was their life, and they became soccer hooligans. But what's brilliant about the book, and again, it's been at least 20 years since I read it, so I could be a little off in my recollection here. But what I recall is that he wrote it in such a way that these guys he was hanging out with were really the protagonists. He got you in on their side for about 75 pages or so, and then when they start misbehaving, when they go to their first game against the Italians and form a mob and start just marauding the streets and bash kids in the head. I mean, it's like they start behaving like sociopaths in this crowd. But he catches you out totally because you're on their team for about 75 pages, and you've identified with them, you sort of laughed with them, you bonded with them as he did, and then he reveals the level of thuggery that they're capable of as a mob, and it was really I recall it being a fascinating book, but it's just a fact that people will do in a crowd. When you see it's the social proof situation where you see everyone doing something, and that on some level gives you license to do it. And there's kind of it's just contagious. When you see people breaking windows or jumping on a car or turning over a car or looting, it takes less of any individual to participate in that. It takes less for you to go in and grab a television set when you've seen 100 of your neighbors do it than if you wouldn't have that morning just woken up deciding to rob the store yourself. So it's we all like to think we're the sort of people who would stand against the mob. We would be the German who would have hid Jews in our basement and stood against the Nazis. And you can multiply those cases ad nauseum. But what a lot of psychological science shows that, there are those people. There are the people who will stand against the tide of imbeciles who are going to do something heinous. But most people are part of the tide, and it's just a very common phenomenon.